We've done quite a few different things with Erica this week, including putting a solar panel up on the roof, getting the roof insulation in finally, and then getting the header liner back in. The solar panel, I think it's just worth saying a few words to start off with. We decided right at the outset that we would like a solar panel if we could get one up on the roof and still stay under 2 metres high. It's really important to us, we have to stay under 2 metres. So after we took delivery of Erica, we very carefully measured and decided we just about had enough room to fit a rigid solar panel on standard mounts. So we bought the solar panel, we bought the standard mounts, they arrived, we put it up on the roof, and we then discovered that with some more measurements, we were somewhere between 10mm under 2 metres or smack on 2 metres, and even if the 10mm under measurement was right, that wasn't enough room for comfort if you're going under a 2 metre barrier. So we ordered some aluminium angle, thinking we would make our own solar panel mount, which would allow us to mount it a little bit lower. Whilst we're waiting for that, we decided that no, actually we were going to go with a semi-flexible panel, which is really thin. Would be absolutely no issue fitting that on the roof and staying under 2 metres. My original concern with a semi-flexible panel is that they're reputed to not last so long because they have overheating issues, because they don't have an air gap underneath. And they're a lot more expensive, but we decided to bite the bullet, ordered a semi-flexible panel. I'll cut out the next bit of the story where we received the flexible panel, did some investigations into how it should be fitted, decided actually we didn't want that particular flexible solar panel, and reordered again and finally settled on one from Photonic Universe. They sell a reinforced semi-flexible panel, which looked a good spec. A lot more expensive than what we'd originally intended, but we decided it was worthwhile, even if it did have a shorter life, just to stay under 2 metres. So that finally arrived, and we finally got some good weather to get that fitted, but that's why it's taken us so long to get the solar panel on the roof, which in turn has held us up from fitting the insulation into the roof and getting the header liner back up. So onwards with the footage of what we've been doing.
Although first I'll go back to this photo which shows the measuring method we used to establish Erica's height. It seemed the most accurate method we could use, and the fact that our initial measurements were wrong is hopefully a reflection on how difficult it is to find the highest point on a roof that's curved in multiple directions, rather than on our competence with a measuring stick.
This is our cardboard replica solar panel that has been called into great use over the last few weeks, over the 3 panels that we've ordered. This is the final one that we're definitely going to be fitting, cut to size, and we've been having a play putting it across the roof, down the roof, discussing all the pros and cons of all the different positions, and this is where it is going to go. So I have a permanent marker pen. I'm about to draw on Erica's roof with a permanent marker pen. The roof is now all shiny and clean. The day has turned rather cloudy, but there's not a better one in the forecast, so we're going to go for it. We've now marked the position where the cable entry gland is going to go, which is just there. So the next thing I'm going to do is drill a hole approximately there. That is a hole in the roof. We're now going to just pop a little bit of hammer right round the raw edges, let that dry, and then we'll seal the gland down. I'm going to just put a little bit of trunking through the hole just to protect the wire from the edges. Just about to start gluing the panel, and I take back what I said about the carpet being the most nerve-wracking part of the build. I'm now reallocating that title to the gluing of the solar panel.
The tape you see here marked out where the dips in the roof were, and on that tape we'd marked out where the adhesive was to go. I'll also just mention it was by virtue of having bought the reinforced panel that we're able to leave the dips in Erica's roof unfilled, and we did consult the supplier's product advisor and one of their engineers to confirm our approach before we went ahead with the fitting.
Underneath that layer of cardboard and foam and all those weights is a solar panel. Underneath that weight, and held by a bit of tape to stop it rotating, is the cable entry gland. Obviously something needs to happen with the cables to tie them down.
There are certainly some things there that I think we've learnt some lessons and would do better next time, but hopefully that's well adhered and hopefully it won't be going anywhere. There's the panel all stuck down, glue now gone off. We originally weren't going to fit the panel till today because today was a better weather forecast, but when yesterday looked okay, we did it yesterday. So first thing this morning I was going to run round it with a bead of black silicone sealant because, as you might notice, the glue we got was white. However, it was forecast to rain at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and now we're just going to be waiting for a nice day for that to be done. Now that the solar cable is through, that's it emanating from the roof there, we're now in a position to insulate the roof, and the first thing I need to do is remove these cable holders across the roof. Bit of annoyance there because these were all hanging off a couple of weeks ago and I kept catching my head on them, so I spent the time and effort cleaning up the roof, cleaning off all the residue and gluing them up before realising that actually we want them to run under the insulation, not behind it. So I'm just going to remove them again. Once I'd done that, we got on with dry fitting the front 3 panels. When we were planning the insulation, we measured the depth of this rib here and it was over 25mm, so bought 25mm insulation board. And as you might be able to see there, because of the shape of the ceiling, it actually protrudes down a little bit below the rib. That's a bit of a concern, having just been and looked at the header liner and the shape it is. The header liner fits into here, which does also sit below the main level of the rib, but because of the shape of the header liner, we're not entirely sure whether it's going to be flexible enough and whether it's going to miss that. Probably not something we're going to be able to establish for certain until we've got the boards glued up and we try refitting it. We have got a bit of a contingency plan, but in the meantime we've just decided that there's certainly not depth to run these cables below the insulation as I'd planned, so we're just going to trim that. We've already trimmed it so that it fits over the shape of the rib there. We're just going to trim it some more so that we can fix these cables actually up on the original roof alongside the insulation there. I probably should have recorded this whole process just to demonstrate how long has been taken moving a series of wire clips by probably about 2 centimetres, having already re-adhered them a couple of 3 weeks ago. If we'd thought ahead at that point, I would have put them in the better place and would have saved this time and effort now in moving them. That's the last one that I'm just clipping up now, and this time we've put all the wires, including the new pump wire, into the clips. Done. Ready for some insulation. We've been sitting having a useful discussion before we go ahead and start with the gluing of the board onto the ceiling, which was, Mick said, where exactly are these lights that we've got cable sticking down for going to come out? And in that discussion we've just decided that actually it'd be a really good idea, before we stick the insulation up and cover everything over, if we put in one more wire, and that will be from where Mick is pointing now, running across that beam and out the other side. We're not going to be connecting that wire, we're just going to lay it in place, because if we should decide that 2 1.8 watt lights at the top, at the back, and 1 reading light at the front is not enough, then that will give us the ability subsequently to add in another light on the other side without having to take the ceiling back down. Having run the wire through the rib, I coiled it up and attached it above the slider door mechanism, so that theoretically at least we'll be able to access it via the open door if we ever want to feed it through the header liner and use it. Enough faffing with wiring, back to those front 3 insulation panels, which we were now finally ready to start fixing in place. Fortunately, the nature of time-lapse really compresses this job, so you can't see quite how much time we spent standing with our heads holding the panels in place. With the front panels up, we cut the rear ones to size, then notched out the end to accommodate the shape of the rib, which is what you see me doing here. Based on our experience with the front half of Erica's roof, we opted to split the width into 4 panels on the rear rather than just 3 to help deal with the curve of the roof. One of those panels also had to be cut lengthwise to accommodate the solar wires. A bit more faffing with wires, a quick wipe with degreaser, and we're on the home straight of getting the final panels in place. Those last two, going around the solar wires and with some wiring around the edge of Erica as well, took quite a lot of trimming. Phew, finally, it is up and done.
Finally, that is Erica's roof insulated. Some weeks after we thought we were going to do it, as we thought it was going to be one of the first jobs. It's finally done. We ummed and ahed whether to use stick pins to put that insulation up, and finally decided on the basis that the minimum order quantity of stick pins and the price that they come in at just wasn't worth it, and we'd just glue it. I think on retrospect, it would have been worth the extra £10 of expenditure for the stick pins. That was not easy to put up because of the shape of the roof, putting solid panels onto a curved roof. I can also report that working for a few hours with your head bent over because of the height of Erica is really quite uncomfortable.
Once the adhesive had had a couple of days to vent, we started taping the seams to create a vapour barrier to the roof. Around the edges we bridged the gaps using loft insulation covered with foil bubble wrap, held on by more foil tape. At this point we left a couple of edges, both in the front section and the back, untaped, as it had become clear that the adhesive needed considerably longer to finish venting its gases.
We've just spent another chunk of time this morning with what felt like a million little pieces of silver foil tape, along with some strips of silver bubble wrap, finishing off around the edges of Erica's roof. We initially glued up the roof, I think it was 6 days ago, maybe 7 days ago. We used the solvent-based adhesive. In retrospect, we should have gone for the stick pins because the venting of the gases of the adhesive has just taken so long. There's still a faint smell now, although we've probably just sealed it in behind the foil. But it's just taken so long for that glue to fully vent off and go off, so that we felt comfortable sealing in around the edges. It does look like a bit of a dog's dinner in places, but that's just because of the shape of those edges. I think there's a lot to be said about having a bigger van and being able to do bigger runs of things. We've had in places had to have a lot of very small pieces of tape, particularly, I don't know if you can see up here, that's the solar panel cabling, and wherever the cabling disappears in behind the where we're trying to seal in, there's a lot of pieces of tape. To try and effect a seal in those places. I think that's as good a job as we can do, and I'm pretty happy with the end result. So onwards now to the next job. And one of those jobs, that's Mick just behind me as I was saying that, he's just finally fitting this door card. We've been delaying putting on that door card in case we were going to get the door handle fixed. But as the door handle works, we've just gone ahead and we're fitting the door card back on. It can always come off again if access is needed later. When we took the headliner out, we had no idea how it was going to fit back in over the insulation. This is our first trial fit, and it's looking promising that it will go. Not quite sure how we're going to get the middle clips back in, but first of all we need to just go and cut a couple of holes for the lights we're putting in. After 5 weeks of work, the header liner is back in. You can see we've got one of the spots hanging down there We've got a couple of wires there. There's another couple of wires at the front for lights. We now need to come up with a way of actually attaching these lights, as it turns out that the header liner isn't firm enough for the job, so we're going to have to put some sort of a plate behind it.
After crimping the wires, I popped the lights up into position. They'll still need something to hold them more firmly, but for now they are in place. And it feels really good to have the ceiling looking finished so that we can move on and start installing some of the furniture we've been making. I'll just finish with a snap of the solar panel now that the black sealant has gone around the edges and those cables have been tied down with 3 cable ties at the back.
We've just been having a bit of useful discussion before gluing the first bit of insulation onto the ceiling, which is
Drinking giggle water.